As the plane touched down at JFK Airport, Sarah felt a rush of emotions, relief, excitement, and a hint of nervousness. It had been nearly 5 years since she'd last seen her Dottie grandmother, and the reunion had been long overdue. Her grandma had flown in all the way from India for a month-long visit, and Sarah wanted everything to be perfect. They'd agreed on a simple plan. Sarah would grab them both coffee while her grandma waited in the arrivals lounge with her carry-on bag. "Just wait here, Grandma," Sarah had said, gently patting her hand. "I'll be right back." Those would become the words Sarah would regret more deeply than anything she'd ever said. The coffee line was long. Then her phone lost signal. Then came the brief confusion with the gate. What was supposed to be a 10-minute stop turned into 20, then 30. By the time Sarah made it back to the lounge, her grandma was gone. Panic surged through her body like cold lightning. She searched every aisle, restroom, and corridor. She asked airport staff, showed photos, even ran to security. Her voice was shaking, her steps uneven. Every second was a reminder. She's 76, in a foreign country, with no phone, and no English. Meanwhile, her grandma, tired and overwhelmed, had wandered out, thinking perhaps she had misunderstood her granddaughter. Maybe Sarah was waiting outside, or at the baggage claim. Or worse, maybe Sarah had forgotten her. The bright lights of JFK, once symbols of reunion and excitement, now felt alien and harsh. People bustled past without noticing the old woman sitting quietly on a bench, clutching her handbag, eyes scanning every passing face with hope. As minutes became hours, her hope started fading. Her joints ached. Her vision blurred from exhaustion and tears. She whispered to herself in Hindi, "Where is she? Why hasn't she come?" Sarah's search grew more desperate. She pleaded with airport police to check CCTV. She replayed every moment from when she'd left her grandma to the moment she realized she was gone. Then, a breakthrough. A camera near a side corridor showed a woman fitting her grandma's description being approached by a man. Sarah's stomach dropped. Was he helping? Was he hurting her? The man seemed to gesture. Her grandma looked confused. She stood, nodded slightly, and followed him. Then they disappeared off camera. Sarah's mind raced. What if he took her outside? What if she's lost in the city? The worst thoughts crept in. Suddenly, her phone rang. "Hello? Is this Ms. Sarah Malik?" a calm voice asked. "Yes. Yes. This is Sarah," she gasped. "We have your grandmother. She's safe. She's in the arrivals hall. Please come immediately." Her legs gave out for a moment before she bolted in that direction. And there she was, sitting on a bench under a flickering arrival screen, wrapped in her shawl, her eyes tired but full of emotion. Sarah fell to her knees and wrapped her arms around her. "I'm so sorry, Dottie. I'm so sorry." Her grandma, eyes glistening, whispered back, "I thought I lost you, Beta." Tears streamed down both their faces as the chaos of the airport seemed to blur into silence. The world melted away, and all that remained was love and relief. That night, Sarah didn't let go of her grandma's hand. Not at the airport. Not in the car. Not even after they reached home. The trauma of the day had shaken her deeply. But it also taught her something more powerful than fear. Days later, they sat together on the living room couch, sipping chai. The aroma of cardamom and ginger filled the space. Outside, the city bustled. But inside, there was peace. Her grandma looked over at her. "Do you remember when you were little and I lost you in the market?" Sarah smiled weakly. "I do. You cried more than I did." Her grandma laughed softly. "Now you know how that feels." Silence followed, gentle, reflective silence. "Dottie," Sarah said, "I don't think I've been present. I'm always rushing. Work, deadlines, emails. I didn't even take a proper day off for your arrival." "You're not alone in that," her grandma said gently. "The world keeps you spinning. But sometimes, Beta, you have to stop spinning so you can see who's still waiting for you." Sarah nodded, tears welling again. "I almost lost you." "But you didn't," her grandma said firmly. "You came back. That's what matters." Weeks later, Sarah began to write. It started with a single journal entry titled, "The Day I Almost Lost My Grandma at JFK." She poured out her heart, every panic-filled second, every lesson, every tear. Then she shared it online. What happened next she never expected. People from all over the world messaged her. Strangers wrote back saying how they hadn't visited their grandparents in years. Some booked flights that very night. Others broke into tears, reading her story aloud to their children. One woman commented, "Your story reminded me to call my dad after 10 years. Thank you." Sarah realized she hadn't just lived a story, she had shared a wake-up call. The next time, a month later, it was time for her grandma to return to India. But this time, the goodbye wasn't filled with panic. It was intentional, slow, full of love. They arrived at JFK early. Sarah didn't leave her side. Not for coffee. Not for anything. They sat in the lounge together, hands intertwined. "You've changed, Beta," her grandma said. "I had to," Sarah whispered. As they hugged tightly before security, Sarah handed her grandma a small envelope. "What's this?" "Something for your flight," Sarah smiled. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Dear Dottie, you once told me that presence is the most powerful form of love. I finally understand. Thank you for waiting for me that day. I promise I'll never make you wait again. Love. Your granddaughter, who almost lost you, but found something even more important in the process." 1 year later, Sarah stood at the podium of a small storytelling event in Brooklyn. The spotlight was warm. The mic hummed softly. "I want to tell you about the day I almost lost someone who means everything to me," she began. And with that, she shared their story. The room was silent, no phones, no scrolling, just hearts listening. By the end, people were crying. Not because the story was sad, but because it was real. Because everyone had someone they'd forgotten to slow down for. And as Sarah looked out at the crowd, she thought of her grandma, safe, healthy, smiling on a video call from India just hours before. This time, she wasn't just telling her story. She was honoring it. Final words. Some stories stay with us because they remind us of what we almost lost. Others, like this one, stay because they remind us of what we still have if we're willing to hold on. The day Sarah lost sight of her grandma was the day she found her again, more clearly than ever before. Not just in person, but in priority, in presence, in love. So, hug the ones you love. Call that elder. Sit a little longer with them. Don't make love wait, not even for coffee. Because sometimes, the smallest detour can cost the most precious time. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it gives you a second chance.